My name's Lorraine Wilson.
I'm counsellor and also mayor.
My name is Hadia Komba and my business.
Jane Taylor.
My name's Joanne Camilleri and
My average day is however I want it to be, and that is part of the beauty of being in business, being able to design your life and your business.
We love doing business in Moonee Valley. We live locally, we work locally, we support other local businesses, and we engage businesses to support us.
One thing I like about doing business in Moonee Valley is that the culture, the people have amazing community in Moonee Valley.
I think there's always challenges with any business, and certainly with council. I guess at the end of the day it's probably the work-life balance that's the elusive thing to achieve for most people, especially women in business and women in council.
the advice I would probably give is to never stop learning, to be really open to learning, to not be afraid to ask questions and step out of your comfort zone, and just go and source as much information as you can from other women in business, from mentors.
That's what women are. We have to manage everywhere, find a way to do it. So.
So we're heading to Crown Street Stables Cafe in Flemington, where they offer this incredible program giving people with a disability opportunity to have real job experience. So I'm excited to get in there and have a chat to them.
We come in every Tuesday. Weekly, and we get the opportunity to interact with the cafe staff, with the trainee program, the people in it, and my clients are able to order for themselves and have opportunities here that they don't really have in other cafes or other venues. They're able to look at them and go, I can get there. And some of my clients have said that to me before. They've said, you know, I can work here, like I can do that. I can work somewhere else that they're filled that they prefer to do, you know, and that's really special because they see someone that they can relate to.
After chatting to Beck, it's really clear to me how important this program is for people with a disability. And I've just learned that one of the graduates from this program now works at Ascot Vale Leisure Centre. I'm going to head down and have a chat to them.
I think the biggest thing is giving someone a chance. To see giving Gemma an opportunity to come aboard as an employee, you know, it's all about giving a chance. So the program did give her those skills there. The most satisfying thing as a team here, that in putting Gemma on, was knowing that the number one thing she wanted to do was work in a health and leisure facility. So to be able to give her her dream job has been very satisfying here as well, and just very happy to have her aboard on the team. So.
Hi, I'm Gemma Berry and I work at Ascot Vale Leisure Centre. I'm in charge of the customer service. And yeah, so I'm helping the gym, taking a class for the oldie over 50 years old. My favourite part of the traineeship was meeting people and meeting customers. And I like to meet lots of people, and it was very interesting because I got to learn lots of stuff. It helped with my confidence, and I'm better talking now than I was before. If you're thinking about doing the traineeship, you should do it because it gives you confidence, and when you move out, you can cook for yourself and all that.
I would love to see more places like Ascot Vale Leisure Centre giving people with a disability a chance. Gemma is the perfect example of why we as a community should support businesses like Crown Street Stables Cafe. Something as simple as a piece of cake and a coffee could really make an impact.
Welcome to Woodlands Park, where the Moonee Valley Festival will be held on the 2nd of March. 4 p.m, be here, unpack your picnic and come and see local musicians, including Jetty Road. All you have to do is bring a picnic, it's a free concert, be here.
There'll be lots of great activities and events for kids and families, old and young, all alike, so we would love to see you down at the Woodlands Twilight Festival.
And don't forget, vote Richard Lawrence for the best picnic unpacking. Do not vote for Rebecca. Vote Richard Lawrence. Councillor Richard, he's the one.
Pick me, pick Rebecca, pick the baby.
No, don't go for the baby. Don't go for the baby.
She was quiet the whole time. She was great. Pick her.
Welcome everybody to the ordinary meeting of Council for the 26th of February 2019, which is now open. A warm welcome to members of the public gallery who have joined us tonight at the Civic Centre, as well as those watching from home via our live stream. Thank you for joining us. As well as being live streamed, the recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that their presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones please be switched to silent mode during the meeting. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their ancestors, spirits and community members past and present. I'd also like to extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Councillors, I have received apologies for tonight's meeting from Councillor Cusack and Councillor Serace. May I have a mover that Councillor Cusack and Councillor Serace's apologies please be noted. Councillor Byrne. Councillor Gatchi Marici. Thank you. I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The next item is the confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the ordinary meeting of Council held on Tuesday 12th of February 2019 be confirmed? Councillor Saipe. Have a seconder for that. Councillor Lawrence. Thank you. I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare an indirect conflict of interest on item 10.4, Community Facility Management Policy Update due to workplace commitments.
Thank you. Does any other councillor have a conflict of interest? No? Thank you. So the first presentation tonight is on behalf of Moonee Valley City Council and my fellow councillors. I would like to acknowledge the sad passing of Don Blanksby. Don was president of the 58th 32nd Infantry Battalion Association and passed away unexpectedly last week. On behalf of Council, I would like to extend our sympathies to his family and friends at this time, including members of the 58th 32nd Infantry Battalion Association. Before I ask whether there are other presentations this evening, I would like to acknowledge the exhibition which is currently on display in the Council Chamber here at the Civic Centre, which is called Because of Her We Can. This is a collection of 24 portraits of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women who live and work in Melbourne's West, and the exhibition is part of a joint project created between Western Regional Local Government Reconciliation Network, Western Health and local communities. Originally this was part of NAIDOC Week in 2018. So the exhibition specifically acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women who have fought for justice, equal rights and rights to country, and who continue to maintain and celebrate Indigenous culture, language, music and art. The exhibition will be on display until 4th of March, and members of the public can come along to view the works on Friday, the 1st of March from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Councillors, do we have any other presentations this evening? I don't believe so. So, councillors, we have received one petition tabled tonight. I would like to ask Councillor Richard Lawrence to present that petition, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have the one petition from Buckley Ward, and I'll read the contents of that petition. Council has received a petition with 140 signatures requesting the provision of a pedestrian crossing at Buckley Street, Essendon, located in the front of the Essendon Baptist Church, 134 to 138 Buckley Street, in direct connection with St Columba's College, with proposed plans for additional classrooms. The petition has been received in two parts, each with a slightly different preamble or prayer given, even though the request is the same. One petition has been submitted by the undersigned on behalf of the Essendon Baptist Church and contains 116 signatures. The other petition contains 24 signatures. A further 87 signatures were on pages which did not get included in the text of the whole petition, and therefore under Council's meeting procedure protocol cannot be considered by the Council. A copy of the petition is attached. As this petition relates to Buckley Ward, could it please be tabled at the 26th of February ordinary meeting? So I just move the motion that Council resolves to receive and note the petition, refer this matter to the Director of Asset Planning and Strategic Projects for investigation and reporting back to Council, and advise that the petition organiser accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Are you happy to move
Yes,
that?
I already stated that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Gatchimochi, thank you. Anyone have any questions regarding that petition? No, I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, that's carried unanimously. Now brings us to public question time, and I believe we do have some question submissions have been received by Council from two community members. So I shall first ask if Ms. Vera Jokic is present in the gallery. Hi Vera. If you would like to please come forward to read your questions.
Thank you, Council and Councillors, for this opportunity. I have two questions. My first question is, will Council support my request as a resident of 13 Clarence Street, and our house lies on the southern boundary of 15 Clarence Street, that the plans be revised to meet Res Code Standard A11 on two fronts. One, that the wall height be reduced so as not to exceed an average of 3.2 metres, and two, that the wall length, which exceeds Res Code requirements by 3.4 metres, be reduced by 1 metre, please.
Thank you. I shall ask our Manager of Statutory Planning, Mr. Petrus Barry, to respond to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Vera, for your question. The average wall height allowable under Standard A11 of Clause 54042 of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme is, in fact, 3.2 metres, with no part higher than 3.6 metres. The plans that were submitted do show the average wall height on both the southern and northern boundaries to be 3.2 metres, with no part higher than 3.6 due to the slope of the land. While there may be a minor non-compliance with the wall height, a condition of any permit issued can ensure that the development does comply with the requirements of this standard. The second part of your question, the length of the walls of the development along the northern and southern property boundary do not comply with Standard A11 of Clause 54 of the planning scheme in terms of length. The walls are proposed to be 16.4 metres in length in lieu of the required maximum of 13 metres. However, the standard is able to be varied if development meets the overall objective, which is, and I quote, to ensure that the location, length and height of a wall on a boundary respects the existing or preferred neighbourhood character and limits the impact on the amenity of existing dwellings. The locality is derived by similarly constructed wall lengths on boundary, and there is considered to be limited amenity impacts on the adjoining property as a result. As such, a variation is considered acceptable in this instance.
Question 2. The plans for 15 Clarence Street do not meet Res Code A17 private open space, which states private open space should not be less than 40 square metres. The plans currently show it is 32.94 square metres. Given this will be a family home of 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms on a lot of 162 square metres, will the Council support my request that the plans for 15 Clarence Street increase the private open space to meet Res Code requirements of 40 square metres, please?
Thank you for that question too, and in response, the application is compliant with the requirements of Clause 54052, Standard A17, private open space of the planning scheme, which states, and I quote, a dwelling should have private open space of an area and dimensions specified in a schedule to the zone. If no area or dimensions is specified in the schedule to the zone, a dwelling should have private open space consisting of an area of 80 square metres or 20% of the area of the lot, whichever is the lesser, but not less than 40 square metres. At least one part of the private open space should consist of secluded private open space with a minimum area of 25 square metres and a minimum dimension of 3 metres at the side or the rear of the dwelling, with convenient access from a living room. Therefore, the dwelling is provided in this proposal of 32.9 square metres of secluded private open space in the rear yard and a further 16.5 square metres of private open space in the front yard, thus equating to a total of 49.4 square metres, which is larger than the 40 square metres required, and therefore the development meets the above requirements of the standard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. Thank you, Petrus. Our next question is from Tony Fisher. Is Tony in the gallery? There you are. Tony, would you like to come forward and present your question?
Thanks for the opportunity to come up and ask these questions. Council have announced that they'll be introducing paid car parking into a number of areas, including an area of direct impact to Maribyrnong River Precinct users, sporting club members and participants, and boathouse patrons, being the boulevard between Orford Road and Holmes Road, Moonee Ponds. As the introduction of paid car parking in the boulevard would appear to be contrary to Council's own policy of encouraging active participation in organised sport and casual leisure activities, why was this site chosen?
Thank you. I shall ask Ms Reiter to answer that question.
Thanks, Mr Fisher, for your question. A range of sites were chosen to introduce a low $1 per hour fee for parking, and these were largely chosen on the basis of encouraging turnover, and in this instance was chosen based on the very high parking demand in that precinct.
Thanks. Our second question is, given this will severely impact on participants, members and volunteers at Maribyrnong Park and the surrounding precinct, how do we elicit from Council an assurance that this will not proceed and parking in the precinct will remain free?
Thank you. At $1 an hour for a limited number of places within that precinct, it's not considered the introduction of paid parking will severely impact users. There's a council resolution for us to proceed with the $1 an hour fee and a commitment to review that after 6 months.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, as we do not have any reports from special committees tonight, the first report on tonight's agenda relates to a planning application at 579 to 591 Mount Alexander Road, Moonee Ponds. So, councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation with 3 additional conditions, being C, the deletion of any structures protruding above the 20-metre mandatory height limit, excluding rooftop services exempt by Clause 4.4 of Schedule 1 to Clause 3708 of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. D, any modifications to comply with the requirements of Clause 58032, Communal Open Space of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme, as a result of Condition 1C. And D, landscaping provided to comply with Standard D10 of Clause 58035, landscaping of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme with renumbering as appropriate.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Nation. Are there any questions regarding that agenda item, councillors? No? Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Mayor, this is an application for a 6-storey development with 4 retail premises down at the bottom and 57 dwellings. It's a site that's a bit of a strange shape, almost an L shape, with a bit of a quirk in it, in the activity centre, and I think we need to keep that in mind. It has frontages both on Mount Alexander Road and also on Ascot Vale Road. To some extent, I almost feel like I should have just recorded my debate from the last council meeting in relation to the planning application on Ascot Vale Road, because the issues of concern that I have are pretty much the same as the issues of concern I had in relation to that application. Certainly the point around the mandatory heights is one that I won't repeat too fulsomely, because I think that, as I expressed last time, that we need to be very strict about the way that we read those mandatory height requirements, and that's again why we've requested that removal of the terrace to the extent that anything intrudes within the 20-metre height limit. As is the case with the development last council meeting, again we've got a vehicle access point at the rear in Ascot Vale Road, and you know, I am increasingly concerned about the appearance of Ascot Vale Road in this particular section, and I think we are going to have to, as a council, once the developments are all said and done, really look at how we beautify this strip, because at the moment it's just going to be pretty much a mass of car park entrances. But again, we have to be pragmatic about what Vic Roads is likely to allow and where a reasonable access point is for vehicles. There were some changes proposed, and you can see in the revised plans they were proposed to deal with issues that were raised by the traffic and transport team. I'm pleased to see that there will be a loading zone provided, and also that the waste will be picked up in the car parking area, because as we know, that's one of the issues that we're increasingly facing where we don't have a loading zone. It's where do people drop things off? Also, the revised plans had increased setbacks and also an increased width of the pedestrian pathway, which was a positive change. From a design perspective, I have to say the Mount Alexander Road design I actually really quite like. You can see that there's been a real attempt to fit in with the surrounding heritage buildings, and there's a real sense of cohesion as you look at the design, so I think that's really quite pleasing. The upper levels I don't love quite as much, but they're set back and designed in a way that they won't be intrusive, and I don't think that they will detract from the lower level design. Again, the Ascot Vale Road side I don't quite love as much the design, but I'm mindful that we don't have the same heritage constraints there, and that again some of the design constraints around providing access way have led to the design as it is. When you look at the assessment, the internal amenity for the apartments is overall it looks to be satisfactory, and some of the concerns that were there regarding overlooking have been addressed via conditions. So I think on balance, given this complies with most of the requirements of the activity centre zone, and given its location, and it is a large site, that this is a development that, with the additional conditions included, is deserving of support.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Only briefly to concur with Councillor Marshall that I believe this application is satisfactory for its site, for its location within the ACZ. That it activates both street frontages, noting Mount Alexander Road does get a nicer facade and no vehicle access, but it also should be noted for that Mount Alexander Road frontage that it does border those properties with that nice heritage facade, the wine bar, and further up to the junction. And as Councillor Marshall said, the design is somewhat complementary with the white frames at the front, and I note that the applicants did engage some quite well-regarded architects to produce that design. The tweaking of the height down to that mandatory 20 metres is important, and a very important addition to the motion before us. It would have been nice if it came to us like that, but I do think the addition of that condition does then make this as I said, a fairly satisfactory application. It's got good diversity in housing stock. It provides probably a balance of car spaces, noting its proximity to the junction, and not wanting to put too much further stress on either of those frontages on Ascot Vale Road or Mount Alexander Road. So on balance, it's been a somewhat dormant site since I think it was Foxtel moved out. Hopefully these sort of applications that are somewhat well thought out will provide some important activation for Mount Alexander Road and for Ascot Vale Road, noting those challenges that Councillor Marshall has mentioned and that the three ward councillors mentioned when discussing a similar application a fortnight ago. So I'm happy to support this motion and would recommend it to my other councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Thank you. Any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Lawrence.
Only very briefly, Madam Mayor, to say that this is a vast improvement on the property or the building that currently covers that position, and I do agree that the facade that they're installing is going to lift that part of Mount Alexander Road, which currently is shall we say, slightly drab in its context, and this will only add to the improvement that's going on along Mount Alexander Road and to a lesser degree Ascot Vale Road. The fact that it's not 20 stories is also pleasing to to me as a councillor, and I'm sure some of our fellow ward councillors in Moonee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any other councillor wish to speak? No, I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. The next report relates to a planning application at 15 Clarence Street, Flemington. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation with some additional conditions. So first is B, a 1.8 metre high fence along the northern and southern boundaries tapered to 900 millimetres within the front setback. C, the dwelling at ground and first floor to be set back an additional 1 metre from the western boundary. D, the average wall on boundary height modified to be 3.2 metres as required by standard A11 of clause 042 walls on boundaries of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. E, the modification to the wall height setbacks of the dwelling to accord with the requirements of standard A14 of clause 54045 overshadowing open space of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. The correct area of unencumbered open space must also be delineated. And F, any internal reconfigurations as a result of condition A, C and E.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Nation. Any questions regarding that motion? Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a proposal for the construction of a double-storey dwelling on what is a very small lot, as many around this particular part of Flemington tend to be. It's 161 square metres in Clarence Street in Flemington. We did have a consultation meeting in relation to this application, and I think it was a positive one. And coming out of that, the applicant amended the plans to reflect some of the concerns, some of the issues raised. And during that consultation meeting, some of the particular areas of concern were around the neighbourhood character issues and also the impact on the neighbours in adjoining sites, because obviously these are very small lots and you have changes and any deviations from res code which can have a fairly significant impact on adjoining properties in a way that they wouldn't have in larger properties. So as rising out of the consultation meeting, there were amended plans, and as noted, they did reflect some of the concerns and address some of the concerns that had been raised during the consultation meeting. And some of the changes were things like the changes to the materials proposed to be used, which I think is a real positive from a neighbourhood character perspective, and also a removal of a proposed courtyard and a number of other changes which were positive. The design itself reflects the character in the sense that it's a proposal to have a low-level front fence, with making sure that the upper level is set back sufficiently so it doesn't intrude on the street, which is again really important given these properties are very narrow and very closely set together. And it has a design element with a pitched roof, which again is important in this particular part of Flemington. And I do note that it is a very distinct part of Flemington, and it's a part where we've actually had quite significant success in defending neighbourhood character and also in defending areas of concern around non-compliances with res code. So I'm very mindful about how VCAT has viewed this precinct, and I think we need to be mindful of those decisions when in our own decision making. So I think on balance with the additional conditions proposed, I hope that there has been an appropriate balance struck between allowing a person to develop their property, but also making sure that that really important and very distinct neighbourhood character is not destroyed or diminished significantly or at all in this instance, but also too that the impacts on adjoining neighbours and their residential amenity is not impacted too much. So I think with the balance of those, or the addition of those additional conditions, that this is an application that we should support.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The next report is titled, 10.3, titled Citizenship Ceremony. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Lawrence.
I'd like to move a motion the way of the officer's recommendation, please.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek. Are there any questions, councillors, regarding this agenda item? Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will, thank you, Madam Mayor, and just to basically give some detail as to what this recommendation is about. And the Australian Citizenship Day is recommended from the Australian Citizen Ceremonies Code, which is what the report is referring to, and just saying that September 17th should be Australian Citizenship Day. You can't say that quickly. And I think this is a good move to endorse a day as it cements the importance of becoming an Australian citizen in effect. And I like that importance that we place on becoming an Australian citizen. I think that's a great thing. It also covers the aspect of shifting. I know it affects the calendar in terms of it being this year, September 17 happens to fall on a Tuesday, but I don't think it's the first time that we've had a conflicting rescheduling of dates for council meetings, although it's not an actual council meeting, it's a briefing, so I'm sure we can shuffle that around. It also refers to a dress code, but it's important that it's not suggesting that I would turn up at a citizenship ceremony as someone who is comfortable wearing a coat and tie. But Councillor Sypek, for example, may turn up with an open neck, very nice shirt. The point of the dress code is that to reflect the significance of the occasion, and I think that's not the significance to us as councillors, but significance to the people who are getting citizenship on that day. The other thing that I notice the report refers to is the 26th of January, and I was very honoured this year to be able to not only attend the citizenship ceremony but also the healing ceremony that Council, being a forerunner in this area, has chosen to have that ceremony, and that was held down at 5 Mile Creek, and a wonderful and sensitive occasion it was too. So I just reflect and would say that we've led the way in terms of what is happening on the 26th of January as well. That's pretty much it, and I certainly suggest that other councillors read the report, and I'm sure they have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak? Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Nation?
Thank you, Mayor. To be honest, I'm a little bit confused by this report and the lack of information that this report appears to omit, to the point that it may almost be apt to seek a deferral because there is key information that is not in the report, linked to the report, or found in the attachments. The report actually fails to outline that the initial request for feedback regarding changes to the Australian Citizenship Ceremonies Code was a letter addressed to the Mayor from the Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs, the Honourable David Coleman MP, asking for feedback on the revised code by the 28th of February. That's not mentioned anywhere in the report, nor is that correspondence referenced or included. The report fails to highlight the key changes to the Australian Citizenship Ceremonies Code, including what many would consider the most contentious part of the revised code, and that is that the federal government is proposing all councils must hold citizenship ceremonies on Australia Day, in brackets 26 January. But probably most importantly, the report doesn't have any excerpts of the revised code. It doesn't include a proper summary of the revised code, and the attachments in the agenda do not include a copy of the new code. And therefore, given that the purpose of this report, well, part of this report is to provide feedback on that code, it makes it very hard as a council to formulate a view when the information is not before us. The VLGA, which I believe our fellow councillor Sypek sits on the board of, actually put together a really well thought out submission which highlights the politicking nature of this decision that's been made by the federal government to reinforce that councils hold events on the 26th of January. And a little excerpt of the VLGA submission is the way that I thought our council, with our values and our beliefs, would respond to the federal government and call out this for what it is. Mayor, I ask that I get another minute, if I may. The VLGA response talks about the actual the consequences of the new code on councils, because we must, under the new code, consult with every one of our federal and state MPs. Now, the way the code's written, we have to consult with 12 Victorian senators before we can plan our citizenship ceremonies. We have to consult with 5 upper house MPs and then state and federal lower house MPs before we can set our calendar. And that's in the new code as must. We cannot hold citizenship ceremonies on any day that federal or state parliament sits, which makes it extremely hard to plan our calendar. And we are being dictated to by the federal government on how we hold our citizenship ceremonies. Yes, we are conferring citizens on behalf of the federal government, but it's our ceremony. The report says that we hold the best ever ceremonies. I'm not quite sure of including anecdotal commentary without it being referenced to anyone, but the report says we hold the best ever. So I'm really concerned that we are not taking the path the VLGA has taken and actually writing back to the federal government saying, take your hands off our citizenship ceremonies, let us do what we have been doing, let us do what we have been doing well, and let's take the politics out of an extremely, extremely important day for so many people.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Marshall?
Thanks, Mayor. I will also be speaking against this motion. And I find it to be a very frustrating and disappointing situation that we're in, and the reality is that this type of politicking by the federal government is what makes people so cynical about politics. It was simply unnecessary, and it is nothing other than dog whistling. For anyone who says, well, why is council sticking their nose into this issue? Well, we have been asked to provide our comments. So just to head off that old line that's always wheeled out when we talk about these types of issues. And respectfully, I also find the report lacking in the analysis that I would have hoped for and expected, and that we usually find in our council reports. And certainly the line that Councillor Nation referred to is one that stuck out to me, about council holding what many consider to be one of the best ever citizenship ceremonies. It was a wonderful ceremony, but I think with our council reports that usually we have evidence, information in there that is supported by evidence rather than anecdotes. So I hope that that's something that we don't see again. And I certainly understand the difficult nature of this issue, and from an officer perspective, the fraught nature in some ways, but we as councillors need frank and fearless advice and analysis in our council reports. And I had to go and review the code separately because it wasn't included. I think this is something that I wouldn't like to see again. In relation to the dress code issue, I have to say there is not a single time amongst the many, many citizenship ceremonies that I've attended where anyone has dressed in a way that is not befitting of the occasion. And it's one of those things you said, talk about making an issue out of nothing at all. People dress magnificently, and they dress as if they are going to a formal wedding or a very formal occasion. It is totally unnecessary, the whole concept of having a dress code. And anyone at all who had bothered to attend a citizenship ceremony would know that that was the case. The requirement to hold a ceremony on Citizenship Day and not on parliamentary sitting days, to me, ultimately council should be holding ceremonies when it suits the conferees and their families, and when there are sufficient numbers of conferees, because surely it's not about... These ceremonies are about people becoming citizens. They're not about politicians, and I'm really disappointed that this is an attempt to try and make it about politicians rather than about our potential new citizens. And as I've reflected, if we're required to hold a ceremony on Citizenship Day, what if we've only got a handful of conferees? We obviously will still have to go ahead with all of the cost that comes along with that. This really is something that was totally unnecessary, and my concern is that in addition to being dog whistle politics or a form of distraction, I wonder if it's an attempt to try and shut down what should be meaningful and open discussion about this really important issue. And we should be mature enough as a country to have these types of really difficult discussions. And we should have political leadership that encourages those discussions rather than tries to shut them down. Because the reality is, each year we see more and more people... sorry, Mayor, can I just ask for a short extension? Sorry. I'm almost finished. We see every year more and more people actually questioning whether Australia Day is the right day for our National Day. And every year we see more and more people educating themselves about our nation's history and understanding why people feel so aggrieved that Australia Day, 26th of January, is the National Day.
Just a point, Councillor Marshall, it is about the citizenship ceremony. We're not debating here about Australia Day, it's talking about citizenship ceremony code.
But it's about the requirement to hold it on Australia Day, which Councillor Nation indicated.
I think it's still two different matters. We're talking about citizenship code.
Sorry, I'm talking about, Australia Day. Yeah, it's in there.
Review of citizenship code.
Page 20 of the citizenship code.
So I think when we're thinking about whether council should be required in accordance with the code to hold a ceremony on Australia Day, we need to think about whether that's an appropriate requirement in the context of what Australia Day is and what it means, and whether it's the right thing to do, because every year more and more people are thinking about whether that is the right thing to do, and myself included, because fundamentally surely the test of when your National Day should be and whether you have to hold a ceremony on those days should be, can all Australians come together harmoniously, and do all people feel like celebrating and really being joyous about what it means to be an Australian. And the reality is it doesn't happen now, and it won't happen for so long as 26th of January is our National Day, and so that's why so many people, myself included, think about the importance of changing the date, and certainly to be dictated to by a government who provides no funding at all to support these ceremonies.
Time is up again. Councillor Marshall.
That's fine.
Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Lawrence, would you like to close?
Mayor, I'll foreshadow an alternative if this motion is lost.
Foreshadowed, yep.
Yes, I will reply and close. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's interesting to note that the report states that January 26, 2019, many considered to be one of the best ever held in Moonee Valley. And I would happen to agree with that very statement. We had some very special speakers this year at the Clock Tower for the ceremony, including the CEO of the Essendon Football Club, who spoke very passionately about what it is to have a multi-racial type of football club that he's tried to develop. We also had our Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Bill Shorten, who spoke very passionately about what it means to have different meanings on Australia Day, January 26th, and how important that is. I thought, listening to that he had a lot to reflect on, as well as to pass on to those that were being made citizens of Australia on that day, that was a good thing to hear from our current opposition leader. The dress code is important, and it certainly is about respect and honouring our new Australian citizens, and that's why it's in that code. It's not there to make a statement or a political statement. It's just honouring and respecting those people who are becoming new Australian citizens, and it's the Australian Citizenship Ceremonies Code, and that's what we're talking about in this report. I think it's just pretty much putting something that we all knew about into something that's a bit more formal in terms of its code, and formalising something that we already knew about, and everybody does anyway. But it at least it raises the bar so that we don't have that situation where things might change. Thank you. That's all I've got to say. And
Thank you. I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Sypek, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Gachi-Marici, Councillor Sharp. All those against? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Nation, Councillor Marshall. That is carried. The next report, Councillor Byrne has a conflict on, so I'll just wait till Councillor Byrne
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
exits.
Indirect due to workplace commitments. Thank you.
So the next item is 10.4, which is a Community Facility Management Policy Update. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Gachi-Marici.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, please.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek. Are there any questions regarding this agenda item? Councillor Gachi-Marici, would you like to move or speak to the motion?
Just briefly, this is just a progress update. We had lengthy conversations a year and a bit ago about opening up all of our community facilities to all of the communities so that there were more accessible and clear ways to hire our facilities, and that's included sliding scales of rates for community groups. So there's discount if you're a not-for-profit, discount if you're local, discount if it's full day, discount based on size, all those sorts of factors. But the other piece of work that is obviously shadowed at the bottom of this that's coming through is about opening up our pavilions for broader community use as well. Often we, as a councillor group, hear feedback from the community about the sports facilities that have been opened in front of them and how nice they look and how great they'd be to be used when they're not games being played, and this is how we make that possible. So whether it's a mothers group that wants to use Duda Gala or whatever it is, this is the policy that enables us to do that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, I'll speak to it briefly, Madam Mayor. Yes, look, I agree with our facilities, and a lot of our halls and pavilions should be multi-purpose used by all available people within the municipality, or maybe some outside the municipality. But there will also be conflict of timing of some of these wanting to have the uses of some of these pavilions or halls. So I think existing users should maintain what they've got, and with the increasing number of female participation sporting in the vicinity in our municipality, there will be greater and greater demand on timing of a lot of our facilities here. So just wanted to make a point of that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Any other councillor wish to speak to this item? Councillor Marshall.
I think some of the reservations that some of us had initially about the potential impact on some of the groups have been alleviated, which is really positive, and I know the officers worked very hard with our community groups to make sure that that was the case, so I think that they deserve to be commended on that work. I agree that part of this whole process is we're looking at these community facilities, whether they be pavilions, halls, in a different way, because we just cannot afford to keep building multi-million-dollar facilities that are used by 100 or 200 people. And this is really positive. I think I acknowledge Councillor Sypek's point. Ultimately, this has to be about equitable outcomes, as is indicated in the report, because we need to make sure that all people in Moonee Valley, and sometimes people from outside, have the ability to use these facilities, and that there is not just one group who gets their foot on it and treat it as if it is their own to the exclusion of all others. So I think overall this has been a positive rollout. It was a very difficult change initially, but on balance I think that through the good work of the officers, they've managed to make sure that the groups that we were concerned about are not negatively affected.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wish to speak? I should put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. I'll just wait until Councillor Byrne gets back to the table. Okay, the next item is 10.5, titled Shooter Street Update. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Gatchimarici.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Lawrence. Any questions, councillors, regarding this agenda item? Councillor Gatchimarici, would you like to speak to the motion?
Literally very briefly, it is obviously self-explanatory as an administrative error, but the table of ratios that was in the original report, the actual numbers were correct. It was just the title of the legislation that was wrong, so it's just correcting an error.
Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak?
No, that's fine, thanks.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. The next report is 10.6 and is the Notices of Motion Quarterly Report. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Lawrence.
I just move the motion and the officer's recommendation and the report.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Byrne. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to the motion?
It's pretty self-explanatory. There's just one small error that I did pick up, and it's just the report said the Assembly of Councillors on Planning Day, Sunday the 10th, was held at wasn't. It should have said was held at Eston Fields, but it actually said the Civic Centre.
Okay.
Wrong report. Sorry, I've jumped ahead. Sorry, no, I've got no further.
Okay, all good. Okay. Any other, Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just that it lists the notice of motion and where they're at. Thank you.
Any other councillor wish to speak? I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Next report is the Assemblies of Councillors. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Nation.
I'll move the officer's recommendation with some administrative changes. Do you need me to read them out, Ms Pope, or we can just note it with administrative changes?
I'd say we need to read out.
It would be advisable if you could indicate the range of administrative amendments and we can make those changes.
All right, so I move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation with the following administrative changes. Update to the venue of Councillors' Planning Day. correction of my non-attendance as an apology at the planning day, and the addition of myself as an apology at the events on the 29th of Jan 2019 at 6 o'clock and the 12th of February 2019 at 6 o'clock.
What was that last date that you said, sorry? After the 29th of January?
12th of February 2019 at 6 o'clock.
Councillors, do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek? Any questions, councillors, regarding this report? Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the motion? Any other councillor wish? Councillor Sypek, sorry. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Gatchamarici?
I will just briefly. I think that for residents and the community watching at home, that we often talk about what we actually cover in the other Tuesdays, and this is where you read that. The bit that you'll notice is that we are doing a lot of work at the moment on budgets and planning for how we spend money going forward for the years to come. So I just think it's really important for us to flag for the community the amount of time and effort from councillors and from officers that's going in at the moment to that process.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchamarici. I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next report is notices of motion, which I don't believe we have any notices of motion tonight. So the next item of business is urgent business. And councillors, do we have any items of urgent business tonight?
Thank you.
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to resolve that council resolve...
hang on, Councillor Byrne, sorry. We first need to vote on whether the urgent business should be received or not. So business regarding, well, for urgent business must not be admitted as urgent business unless A, it relates to a matter which has arisen since the distribution of the agenda, and B, cannot safely or conveniently be deferred until the next ordinary council meeting. So maybe I should just, Ms Pope, just get a brief outline of the urgent business. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just so in relation to resolving as to whether to consider the matter should be included for discussion, the substantive motion that you want to put forward, we'd need to first go through a process of determining by resolution as to whether the council would accept it is urgent business to be debated tonight.
Mm-hmm. So shall Councillor Byrne provide a brief outline? Yes. Just a brief outline, please.
Would you like me to say what the urgent business is?
A brief outline, not the resolution at this stage, just a brief outline of what the urgent business is.
The brief outline is in regards to International Women's Day and this year's event and speakers.
Thank you. So, councillors...
Just for clarification, there's several events, so are we talking about any particular event?
I think, Madam Mayor, it would be easier if I just read the resolution and then we can talk about it whether it's urgent.
That was my point of clarification. Aren't we entering into debate about whether it's urgent or not?
I think councillors would need to know what the resolution is to decide whether it's urgent.
We don't normally discuss the resolution until it's been voted on as whether it is urgent business. Yep. So that's why I said to talk about it just generally. If the point of clarification is regarding what event you're talking about, you are talking about the International Women's Day breakfast?
Well, sorry, Madam Mayor, but it will be potentially anything but yes. But why it's urgent, yes. I understand that we will be debating on whether or not it's urgent, but I think that it's probably worthwhile if I just read it.
I shall just get advice on that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if Councillor Byrne could read the motion that she is proposing to put, and then the discussion and debate would be around whether that item, as Councillor Byrne is proposing, qualifies as urgent business.
Yeah. Councillor Byrne, if you would like to read your item of urgent business.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That Council resolves to only have female speakers, excluding the Mayor of the Day, if applicable, as main speakers at any Council-run International Women's Day event, inclusive of the 2019 events.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. So, councillors, we first need to discuss and debate whether the item proposed by Councillor Byrne is urgent by nature, and it is under 6.12 of our meeting procedures. So, would any councillor like to provide their thoughts on that? Sorry, councillors, I'm just going to ask for advice. Okay, so Councillor Byrne has told us what her urgent business is, but we first need to debate whether it is urgent. So I could have a motion from a councillor if they believe that it is an urgent item of business, and then we can debate the urgency from there. No, we first need to debate whether the item is urgent business. So that is what Councillor Byrne...
Oh, sorry.
I'll just flag exactly what I'm saying. Councillor Byrne has put up an item of urgent business, but we first need to debate whether the item is urgent. So I do not think it is practical for Councillor Byrne to move her motion for urgent business when we first need to debate whether it is urgent business. So if there's a councillor around the table that believes that this is urgent business, then he or she may move that.
Point of clarification, there's a motion on the floor to receive urgent business. Councillor Byrne has a motion on the floor that not the substantial, but she's got a motion on the floor that we receive urgent business. Yes. So she's got the motion on the floor, so she would speak to the motion. She has moved the motion of urgent business.
Could I second it if that moves this process on?
No, if you can just understand exactly what I'm saying. I asked Councillor Byrne to say vaguely or generally what the item of urgent business was, because it can't be moved as a motion. The only motion that can be moved right now is whether the proposed item is urgent. So Councillor Byrne did not move that. Councillor Byrne moved that. Councillor Byrne moved that.
So we're debating that?
No, we're not debating that. So that's what I'm saying. So I'm asking if councillors have a mind to believe that this is an item of urgent business, they can move the item as urgent.
Could I please move that Councillor Byrne's concept of International Women's Day be considered urgent business?
Thank you, Councillor Gauci-Marici. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Marshall. So, Councillor Gauci-Marici, would you like to speak to your motion?
Given the time criticality of International Women's Day events in the coming weeks and the fact that the advice regarding the speaker was received after the agendas and meeting discussions, I think this is completely relevant for urgent business.
Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak to that motion?
I think if we had an example in our meeting procedure protocols of a matter that would fall within the definition of urgent business, this would be it, because it meets the criteria without any doubt.
Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Nation?
Yes, this item, as put by Councillor Byrne, meets the criteria you've laid out in that 6.1.2 as earlier flagged and read out by yourself, so I would be supporting this be heard as an item of urgent business, as Councillor Gauci's motion.
Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Lyons?
Just for clarity, because I'm just trying to get my head around all this, and maybe I'm a bit slow. Some people think I am. Is this just for 2019, or is this in perpetuity?
At the
We're
moment,
not discussing that?
At the moment, Councillor Lyons.
Oh my goodness.
At the moment, Councillor Lyons, we're just discussing whether it should be admitted as urgent business.
And definitely I am a bit slow. Okay.
Any other councillor wish to speak to this item? I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Gatchamrici's motion? I'll read them out. Councillor Sypek, Councillor Nation, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Gatchamrici, Councillor Lawrence. Against me, Councillor Sharp. So that item is so moved. So now we shall go to the urgent business item, and if Councillor Byrne would like to move the actual urgent business item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move that Council resolves to only have female speakers, excluding the Mayor of the Day, if applicable, as main speakers at any council-run International Women's Day event, inclusive of the 2019 event.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Gatchamrici. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, I would. This year, International Women's Day falls on Thursday, the 7th of March, hence why this is urgent. And it's a day about celebrating women, but also to acknowledge that no country in the world has achieved gender equity. Thanks to Councillor Jim Cusack, who unfortunately isn't here with us tonight. Many years ago, he started an event or initiated an event in this chamber to acknowledge this day and to celebrate it and to give a chance for speakers to come out and to speak fairly consistently to school-age students, often sponsored by Rotary Club, a few staff, and obviously my understanding is every councillor around here has been to at least one event, but many events. The idea behind International Women's Day this year, as per the hashtag, is #BalanceForBetter, because the better the balance, the better the world. Now, in our researched, collaborated, consulted on MV 2040 document, we have 4 main principles that guide all our decisions and actions, and one of these is access, inclusion and equity, and states that equity makes communities stronger. Our commitment to social inclusion and equity seeks to advance a fair and just society and promote respect for every person. Gender equity is also referenced in the Health and Wellbeing Plan that was incorporated into our current council plan. I was doing some research on some statistics. The Human Rights Commission's website was interesting. It talks about the national pay gap being at 15.3%, that women earn a lower weekly wage and have less super, and on average women have to work an extra 56 days per year to earn the same pay as men do doing the same work. There are many gender equity examples that I could have given. The International Women's Development Agency, and I will, as it was urgent, states on their website, too often systems are not designed to allow women to succeed. Gender inequality is perpetuated by both formal and informal systems, structures and attitudes. And for women, and I could go on, but basically I think that most people around this table can say that this world is not fair at times, and we need to try to do everything we can to make it fair and to inspire women. And what a perfect example International Women's Day will be. Now, I do feel a little bit unusual having to come to bring this into the chamber, because I would have thought that at an International Women's Day it would make perfect sense and it would just be expected that keynote speakers would be female, or perhaps particularly prominent activists in the female equity space. I want to reassure that this motion has not come about because I have any issues with the current speaker that is due to be speaking at our International Women's Day breakfast. I just want to ensure that we do not miss a really important opportunity for the, let's say, 50-odd school girls that will be in the be in this very chamber on International Women's Day, that they can be inspired by a female and that we use this event to the best of our ability. Because at the end of the day, we have to revert back to what International Women's Day is all about. And we are celebrating women. And by doing that with a male speaker, it doesn't meet what we're supposed to be doing, as I mentioned before, through MV 2040, through our council plan and through what International Women's Day is supposed to represent. So I hope the councillors can get behind this urgent business, because going forward, as I said, didn't think that I would need to bring it into the chamber, as I would have thought International Women's Day would speak for itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Gatchi-Murici, would you like to speak?
I will, thank you. Councillor Byrne has spoken fairly comprehensively, but I think what's really important for us to remember is the audience of the events that Council is putting on for International Women's Day. Well before I was a councillor, I attended these events in my capacity as a Rotarian, where the Rotary Clubs sponsor students from their local schools to attend this breakfast. And the point of the breakfast was to empower and to enlighten and to engage young women in our community and to help them see what opportunities and access to leadership they have. This is our perfect chance to use that breakfast to inspire those women. And we don't necessarily not inspire those women by having a male speaker, but there's 364 other days of the year to do that. For us, International Women's Day is the day that was created to recognise the achievements of women. So we can't move off from that day by not saying that a woman is the most appropriate person to inspire and engage those young ladies to be leaders in our community going forward. So I really thank Councillor Byrne for this motion, and certainly the proposed speaker is incredible in his own right. He runs a wonderful charity that does incredible work in our community. And I certainly think there are avenues for us to still continue to fund that charity through the donations on the day, and for him to have multiple opportunities to speak to our community. He's just not the right speaker for that audience.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchi-Murici. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Marshall?
Thank you. In one level, it's quite disappointing. It's quite disappointing in a sense that we find ourselves here on the day in which the Fearless Girl statue was unveiled at Fed Square, because there are some things that you think should be a given. And for me, the idea that at our International Women's Day event that the main speaker would be a woman, or as we've seen previously, girls, young women who are incredibly inspirational in their own right, I just would have taken it as a given. So given it's not a given, I think this is probably some really positive guidance to make sure that always we use what is a day to celebrate the achievements of women, but also to recognise that there are still very significant discrimination against women in a whole range of ways, that we use this day to provide a platform for a woman, because it goes back to the whole you can't be what you can't see, and this is a absolutely positive platform that we have as a council to provide what is primarily a group full of women and young girls with the opportunity to see inspirational people, inspirational women in their community. Again, the speaker proposed is an inspirational person, obviously has accolades and does an incredible amount of worthy work in our community. But there are so many other possibilities for him to come and speak to us. So I think it should be a given, it's not a given, so let's have a council resolution making sure that we don't find ourselves in this situation again.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Nation?
Thanks, Mayor, and clearly we still have a long road to equity, given a female has to bring this motion into the chamber to really just get something that we would all think is relatively obvious and we would hope could be resolved without it having to come to the chamber. Sadly not, so I commend Councillor Byrne for bringing this to the chamber. I won't add much to anything that the speakers before me have mentioned, other to say that the origins of this day date back to the early 20th century, celebrating womanhood. The best way to celebrate womanhood is to hear the amazing stories and life experiences of any of the 60,000+ females that reside in the city of Moonee Valley. We've had some excellent speakers, from council employees to ex-MPs to amazing sports stars. We can all just either turn to our left or right and see 20 amazing local Indigenous females that are displayed on the wall of our Civic Centre here, each with their own amazing story. And I know that we don't have to go very far to find inspirational females that reside or work or play in Moonee Valley. So, Councillor Byrne, it saddens me that you've had to take this route, but good on you for doing it. And hopefully you've set a precedent for well, unless it gets overturned or doesn't get up tonight. Hopefully you've set a precedent, because one would hope that these sort of motions won't be needed, but sadly in this day and age they still are.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor wish to speak on this item? Councillor Sypek?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Byrne, for bringing this up, and I commend you on doing this. But I just want to maybe a slight word change, the word only, because there are women out there who might have passed on, and the only person who could tell their story would be their partner or their husband. So I don't want to, exclude something like that. Or maybe we could have a Prime Minister or a Premier or a future Prime Minister in the municipality. I mean, we just exclude. I just don't want to exclude everyone, but I would rather say predominantly female speakers, not to exclude everyone.
So, Councillor Sypek, are you asking Councillor Byrne for an alternative?
Change.
If that's the case, you have to go through the formal amendment route, and you would have to put up that as a formal amendment and get a seconder for that, and then that would have to be voted on, and then go back to the substantive motion.
Okay, all right. All I'm just asking is, just where appropriate, predominantly female speakers, but if there are exceptional circumstances.
You have to put up a formal amendment if you'd like Councillor Byrne to change that. Well, Councillor Byrne wouldn't change that. It'd be the council is changing that. So, are you wanting to put up a formal amendment, or are you just? Okay. So, Councillor Sypek.
Pretty much what you've got there, except for only, right, but predominantly.
So, Councillor Sypek would like to put up an alternative that states council resolves to have predominantly female speakers, excluding the Mayor of the Day, and the rest is as written. So to that, it's a formal amendment. I've just said that 3 times, I think.
Just not to close the door on everyone.
It's a formal amendment. So that's what your formal amendment would say. And would I have a seconder for Councillor Sypek's formal
Point of clarification, can I just get the proposer of the amendment to just read the amendment, please?
It's a change to the wording that council resolves to only have predominantly female speakers, or in addition, predominantly female speakers. So do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Lawrence. Would you like to speak to that motion?
I think I've already spoken for what I'm saying. Just don't close the door on everybody.
Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, and I agree with the sentiment for what this motion is trying to achieve. Not just I'm talking about the whole motion, not just the amendment, because I haven't spoken to that yet. However, I would make one observation, and it's that men cannot inspire women, and I take exception to that because I think it falls on and you did mention this, Councillor Byrne, in your opening address, that women need to be inspired by women. That is true, and I agree with that. But also, I think it's also true that men can inspire women, and I hope they can, because I get inspired by speeches that I hear from women So it works both ways. It's not just a one-way opportunity for women to inspire young women only. I think we have to take that equity aspect and say, well, it works on both sides, and that's just my own thoughts on it. But I think we also have to take Councillor Sypek's point that if there is a male talking to a female audience predominantly, that he could be speaking on behalf of a deceased partner or daughter or mother or whatever. So there is potential need for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Would any other councillor like to speak to this formal amendment? Councillor Gauchi.
I'll speak to the amendment, thank you. Certainly I think the fact that this has been moved when the entire concept of International Women's Day this year is Balance for Better, about building a gender-balanced world, there is a significant disadvantage for women in the workplace, in the community, our ability to promote women, and the one day a year we get to say, no, actually this is all about women. I can't believe that we could comprehend that we shouldn't just for one day, let this day be about women. We have 20 young women who ran an incredible women's leadership program through Moonee Valley. We didn't run a men's leadership program because there are plenty of leadership opportunities available to men. It was run specifically for women because we need to promote opportunities for women. And as a young woman who sat in schools and was inspired by men happily, I never saw International Women's Day as a day not to look up to the women who inspired me.
Thank you, Councillor Gauchi. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Nation.
I was going to say that I can't support the amendment because the reason this motion was even had to be brought into the chamber would then be negated by us accepting this amendment. And I've already spoken why Councillor Byrne shouldn't have had to go through this formal process to get a female speaker at International Women's Day, but by adjusting or accepting this amendment to say predominantly, that then doesn't solve what Councillor Byrne is trying to solve, and therefore would render the entire motion and a specific purpose meaningless. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Mayor. And I also will be speaking against the amendment, though I understand the rationale for Councillor Sypek putting it forward, but I agree with Councillor Nation. It goes contrary to the whole intent of this particular motion. And if there are distinguished citizens of Moonee Valley, if we have a Prime Minister or a Premier or whatever it might be come from this municipality who is a male, then there will be countless other opportunities for them to speak and for them to inspire our community members. So let's have this one day as an opportunity for women only to inspire. We would hope that there would be a whole range of other opportunities too. And Councillor Byrne has indicated in our overarching planning and policies how important it is that we use opportunities like this to actually promote women and to give them the opportunities that so often they don't get in our society. So I can't support the motion. The other thing, I suppose, in relation to speaking on behalf of a female person who may have passed on, you would assume that there would be a woman who could speak on behalf of an individual who had passed on. So I think we could use our imagination that way and overcome that particular issue.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Any other councillor? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't be supporting this amendment. I think there's been enough touched on it, but basically give us our day. Females, unfortunately, still need this day to inspire others, and by having a male up there on International Women's Day, regardless of whether it's Bill Shorten, who may be the Prime Minister in a few months' time, it just completely, as Councillor Marshall said, there will be plenty of other opportunities for males to speak. Just give us our day.
Thank you. I think everybody has spoken. So Councillor Sypek, would you like to close debate on your formal amendment? Actually, no, there's no right of reply on a formal amendment. So sorry, there is no closure on that. So I shall put the formal amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Sypek. All those against? Councillor Nation, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Gatchi-Marici and Councillor Sharp. So that formal amendment is lost. So now we go back to the substantive motion, which is before us. Now, Councillor Sypek, you were speaking on that substantive motion. Did you wish to continue speaking on that substantive motion? I think you probably finished. Now, I think everybody else had spoken on the substantive motion. Have you spoken on substantive? No, Councillor Lawrence, I think you were the last one.
I covered it virtually when we were talking about the amendment.
Substantive motion. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity, but I think I covered it in the amendment.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to ask for some discretion as the chair, just to put just a little bit of clarification, because there's a lot of words that have been thrown around, some just to suit certain purposes, but the actual International Women's Day 2019 theme, as per the United Nations, is more powerful together. And the theme for International Women's Day today, or this year, recognises the important role women, men and gender diverse peoples play to advance gender equity. So the speakers that we had flagged for the upcoming International Women's Day breakfast in particular were a man and a woman. So it was not just a man, as has been portrayed in the debate tonight. It was a man and a woman jointly, and basically to reflect the United Nations theme of more powerful together. So I shall now ask Councillor Byrne to, is there a right of reply on urgent business, Councillor? Councillor, Ms. Pope.
Certainly to you, Madam Mayor, there's a normal right of reply given that there was speaking in opposition to the proposed motion.
Would you like to speak to the right of reply, Councillor Byrne?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've just pulled up the International Women's Day website and it's Balance for Better.
United Nations theme is more powerful together.
Well, we can use both.
Yes, thank you. I'm actually correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Would you like to close, Councillor Byrne?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I still think that the hashtag Balance for Better will be around a lot on next Friday for International Women's Day and for the whole of next week. It's been really interesting to listen to people speak around the chamber. It's great to hear the support, and it's also been interesting to hear how alarmed a lot of people are for the fact that something like this would actually have to come into the chamber. In response to what I've heard in terms of men cannot inspire women, that definitely wasn't the meaning of this motion at all. Men absolutely can inspire women, and men can absolutely inspire women every single day of the year. There's no doubting that. And I hope that in the future there will be a lot more males in this space that will be speaking up about the equity issues in regards to males and females. But at this stage and in this chamber and on International Women's Day, or on Thursday when we have our breakfast, it is extremely important that we have a female and females going forward inspiring the leaders of tomorrow.
So I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's Councillor Sypek, Councillor Nation, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Gatchi-Marici, Councillor Lawrence. All those against? Councillor Sharp. So that motion is carried. Up to item 13, do any councillors have anything that they'd like to report on in their roles as delegates? No. We do not have any confidential reports, so as such that concludes our business on tonight's agenda. Thank you for members of the public gallery and those watching on live stream for your interest. I declare this meeting closed.